Yeah, but we did not expect, I mean, it was interesting, to say the least.
Yeah, that was my back door they was coming through. My back was toward that door. All I could do was say,
You don't care about that kind of stuff too much, huh?
no. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Happy Monday. Should I say happy hot Monday in the city of Austin? We've got a lot to talk about tonight, and the things we're going to talk about are so important for every Austinite. Even if you're not an Austinite, you may have some ties in this city, it's still important. So I'm going to hand it over to Pokey.
Yeah,
He's going to introduce our
if
guest.
it's important, when they finish with us, they're going to be coming for you. Am I wrong? Nelson Leonard couldn't make it here, so I'll take over for now. Y'all were at the gentrification thing. You and Fred were. Marilyn and Fred were there. My computer's down. She's working on it. Might come up, but otherwise we have some film about it. Y'all had some fun, some excitement about it. So we got Ed English here, and he's going to tell us about code next. Why don't we start with that? Because if she brings the computer up, then we can go back to what happened yesterday. Because I know he's got like the timeline and everything going on. He can tell us where we're coming from and where we're going. I think.
I can do that. I thought it might be helpful to at least bring the viewers up to date on what's happened with the petition drive and the petition itself over the last few weeks. In late March, I think it was the 29th, the date's not absolutely critical there, the petition was turned into the city clerk, and on April 23rd, the city clerk validated the petition. And what does that mean? That simply means that the petition was deemed legal by virtue of having a sufficient number of validated, registered Austin voters signed, and that's the threshold that you have to cross to validate a petition. The next event, moving forward a few days, the City Council had a regular meeting on April 26th. That was the last meeting, and true to form, they had on the agenda a vote to adopt the petition as a city ordinance. They called it up at 2 a.m. Friday morning on the 27th.
Don't they always do that?
They
want to slip something in, right?
Controversial procedures, or ordinances, I should say, tend to come up in the wee hours of the morning. The city, with a 6-4 council vote, voted not to adopt the petition. Now, what does that mean? The city's within its rights to do that. The city can adopt a valid petition if they so choose, and in this case, had they done that, it would have prevented or negated the necessity to put it on the November ballot. The city would have, if they'd adopted it, just essentially accepted it as an existing city ordinance. At that point in time, it would have become a law. But they did vote 6-4 to not adopt. The next event coming up is where the rubber really meets the road, and that is the council's vote to put it on the ballot. The petition has met the legal requirements to put it on the ballot. We know that we expect that there's going to be some issues raised, or issues already have been raised, about whether or not the council will even put it on the agenda. They may choose to ignore it. We think that's probably not terribly likely, but the more likely scenario is that they'll put it on the agenda and vote it down as an item to put on the November ballot. And in essence, at that point in time, it is our contention, and we think we have incredible legal standing and precedent to make this statement, that they will be violating state law. The city has gone outside to pay for, with your tax dollars, legal counsel that has advised them that they think, they have advised the city council that they think the petition is invalid. They have a right to seek outside legal counsel, and they have a right to challenge the validity of the petition
Hold on a minute. Can you hold that spot?
after it's on. Okay.
Guys, we're short on some staff tonight. I got to go turn this echo down. Oh no, I don't. We do have staff. Go ahead. Keep going.
It's
Well-
TV next time.
I know it's TV. I need to get up and turn it down.
Turn it down.
Yes, ma'am.
How many of those 6 are up for re-election?
There are, it's a good question. I believe
Thank
there
you.
are 3, the mayor, Renteria,
Greg said, Greg.
It'd be easier for me to just count or just give you those no votes, and then as I go through them, I'll remember who's up for it. The 4 votes, I'll start with that. The 4 votes, in other words, adopting it as a city ordinance, were Kathy Tovo, Allison Alter, Leslie Poole, and Ora Houston. So the rest were no votes, and that would be P.O., the mayor, Greg Cassar, Delia Garza, and Ann Kitchen. And Kitchen's up for re-election, P.O.'s up for re-election, the mayor's up for re-election.
And Greg.
And no,
Tovo.
Greg
No,
was re-elected.
And Tovo.
And Tovo, yes. Well, Tovo did vote for the adoption. But the rubber is really going to meet the road. We're going to see where things stand from a legal standpoint and what the city council thinks of your right to vote when it's placed on the agenda as an item to be voted on, to be placed on the November ballot. Like I say, they can refuse to even put it on the agenda. I don't think that's likely. I think they will put it up for a vote, and I don't see any realistic possibility of them approving it for the ballot, to put it on the ballot. If they choose to do that, we will sue them. Rest assured that will take place because if they want to challenge the language, if they want to say it should have been a charter amendment versus an ordinance, the city has a legal right to do that after they put it on the ballot. But we have met the legal requirements to be on the ballot. So we will sue if they do vote.
When you say we, who are we talking about?
Well, we're going to talk probably Fred Lewis,
Oh, okay.
Community Not Commodity.
Okay.
I don't know if Indy Austin will actually be a party to that suit, but you can take that to the bank. We hope that they will they'll put it on the agenda, and we'll see this vote before they break. The summer break is normally in July, and that'll be the case again this year. So we hope that they will take it up before the summer break to not try and slide it in and push it through or push the no vote through. I'm fully expecting that in August when they come back. They're going to be elbow deep in the budget, and I don't think that's an appropriate time to take this up. There's more than ample opportunity to put this on the agenda and have that vote before the summer break. Also, I wanted to alert people to a couple of the next council meetings, although I do not know that the vote will be on the agenda. There's a council meeting coming up this week on the 10th, and there's another council meeting this month on the 24th. There are some Code Next hearings coming up. I want to hold this up for the viewers. I know you can't read that, but it's a little green and white postcard on one side, all white on the other. And every resident in Austin should have received one of these about three.
There should be a website there or something where they can,
There is.
on that card.
Yes, austintexas.gov/codenext/Code Next should have this information on it. This is a lot more important than you might realize because it lists the public input sessions for Code Next. These are designed to take input on the content of Code Next. They're not necessarily set up to as venues for you to offer your opinion on the petition drive and the right to vote on Code Next. But you can stand up and say anything you want to. But two of the opportunities have already passed, but we do have a couple coming up on Tuesday, May the 29th at 10 a.m. City Council will be taking input at City Hall, and also on June 2nd, that's a Saturday at 10 a.m. City Council will be taking input at City Hall. I encourage you to offer your input, in particular on the content itself. And one thing I want, and I'll wrap up here and take a breather, but the one thing I like to stress, because I hear this misunderstanding all the time, is the petition is not to vote on the content of Code Next. That would occur downstream. The petition has always been about your right to vote on Code Next. That's what is at stake here. If you decide, as the changes are made to Code Next, that you like it, you can vote for it. If you don't like it, you can vote against it. But we're firm believers in the fact that you should have a right to vote on Code Next after the finished product is voted on by council.
Pokey asked a question real early that I also like to find out, because both factions are heavily financed, okay? My question on the Code Next side.
What, hold on, wait a minute. Say both factions are heavily financed? Is that what you just
Well,
said?
what I'm saying is that they have funds to fight the issue, is what I'm saying.
Okay.
Maybe I pushed the envelope by saying heavily.
Do I need to, do I
Okay,
need to show the
but-
PAC disclosures?
No, but what I'm saying
The
is
people who are
that.
pushing Code Next have a lot more money.
Well,
Be
okay,
sure about that.
Okay,
Absolutely.
well, that may be true, but what I'm saying is like, from both sides, they both went to a level of opposition to raise funds to fight, to stand for whatever issue. My question is on the Code Next. I mean, like from your end, why do you feel that it is being challenged? Where did that genesis come from? Did it come from? Yeah, well, where did it come from?
Well, to your
Good question. You know what he's saying?
yes, I do. I believe I do.
That was a done deal, but now all of a sudden we got a challenge for it.
Well,
I'm glad about it.
well, for one, and I want to repeat basically what I think Fred was saying. Community, not commodity, and to a far lesser extent, Indy Austin, they're not well financed. It was quite a challenge to keep enough funds coming in to be able to pay for a number of the
I
activities.
misspoke on that,
Okay.
okay.
And
move forward.
the opposition to and we'll make sure I understand what you're defining as opposition, is that the opposition that was raised by community, not commodity. Why did that happen?
Yes.
That happened because over the many months of public hearings and public input sessions on Code Next, I think a lot of people felt that the process had been derailed, that they lost faith in the process, and I can tell you and I'll give you a personal observation. I sit in on some of the public input sessions, and I listened to what people had to say about, they were speaking about the content of Code Next, how the zoning changes would affect them and their neighborhoods. Then I go down to the council's work sessions, where the consultants report to council what they're picking up at these input sessions. Let me tell you something. You would swear you were on two different planets. The public input sessions, I heard very little to nothing of what the public wanted to see as changes, what their recommendations were, what their questions were. When the consultants went before council, those questions, those concerns, those recommendations were never heard.
Who are these consultants?
That's Opticos.
Paid, private people?
Yes, they're the consulting firm that the city of Austin hired to essentially put the content of Code
What's
Next.
your name again?
Opticos.
Opticos.
I know of another one because I got interviewed by a nonprofit that was pushing for Code Next, and he met with me. It was a Latino, I can't remember his name, and he was trying to convince me that was the best thing for me to support. So that's why I'm saying the dynamics of the whole discussion, and it is very big because whatever decision is made is going to impact landowners for many years to come.
Decades.
Yes, and I know that the opposition is realtors, it's bankers.
Yes.
They're not the opposition. They're the supporters, boosters of Code Next.
Okay, maybe I'm fumbling my language here. What I meant to say is that the supporters for Code Next and those that created this whole Code Next movement,
Okay.
it's developers,
Mm-hmm.
the bankers, and our government.
Well,
Californians.
Hold on. Go ahead, Mo.
Just a quick comment on this. I've been doing a little bit looking into the research on the Code Next and stuff. I think I put in something like Code Next opposition in Austin, and West Austin, and
Wesley Hill?
Westlake. Well, out West Austin and not Terrytown. What's that other one? I think Terrytown.
Rollingwood,
Hyde Park or something like that.
Westlake, Rollingwood.
Yeah, Hyde Park. They're all against.
Rosedale?
Well, it's Hyde Park over there. I think it's
Yeah.
Hyde Park. They said that they're all against this. And it's like, if they're not just listening to East Austin, why don't they listen to West Austin too? You know?
Well, okay, I guess let me give you my 2 cents on some of this.
Go back there and listen.
Any luck on the computer?
Remember, Code Next is supposed to implement Imagine Austin. That's what it's supposed to do, okay? Our previous city council said it was going to be implementing Imagine Austin, meaning it was going to do a rewrite or an updating, a significant change to our existing land development code, which we've had for over 30 years, okay? But what they proposed was much more modest.
Oh,
I mean, we're
yes.
talking about maybe $1.5 million, okay, to hire consultants, have community hearings, listen to the people, and to crunch something new. The problem is that our planning department is horrible. Matter of fact, in the Zucker report, which was an independent third-party analysis of our planning and zoning department, Mr. Zucker, a very distinguished planner, concluded that of the hundreds of cities that he has looked at in his career, Austin was the worst that he had ever seen. Let me repeat that, okay? That's how bad our planning and zoning department is.
And
in
how
the
much
city.
did all this cost?
Millions of dollars.
8.2
You know,
at this
now-
point.
How do I get one of them jobs?
This $1.5 million has turned into this Frankenstein monster that has cost over $8 million of taxpayer money and counting for a code that is empirically worse than the one we have now.
Wow.
It's over
Remember-
1,500 pages.
They're up for reelection. Remember this discussion? They're up for reelection.
Well, another thing, Fred, too, is that they wouldn't have to get the consultants if they would really listen to what the people had to say. That's free.
And like Ma said, you know, if they don't listen to East Austin, she kind of wrapped it up all in one couple of sentences.
It's true.
At
really.
least listen to West Austin, because we're against Code Next from get-go. Our neighborhoods in East Austin. And
Well, a
we've
lot-
always raised these issues. The last plans that we worked on, the neighborhood plans, that was the beginning of all this displacement in our, you know, from our area. But nobody would listen.
Well, there's something.
No one would go to the extreme of community, not communities, to go raise funds and have a lawyer and all these mechanisms. And I appreciate and commend those efforts from y'all, from community to not community, because we don't have those kind of resources in our community. So I just
Well, I
want
mean,
to make that clear.
I want to reiterate, and I think it's important because it's not said often enough. Code Next is supposed to enact the Imagine Austin plan, okay? Now, what you're not going to hear a lot of the time, and I'll say this, is that if you only focus on Code Next, you're going to overlook the fact that there are problems in Imagine Austin itself that need to be addressed, especially problems having to do with equity and definitions of the quote-unquote environment, okay? Unless and until you are able to admit that, if you only think, oh, Code Next, if we defeat Code Next, that's going to fix things, it's not. You have to fix Imagine Austin itself, because Imagine Austin itself is a flawed product and has many of the shortcomings that Code Next has.
Can I throw something in there about Imagine Austin? I went to these things. I used to be able to get around pretty good.
Yeah.
They're always the same people that would show up at every one of those meetings. Bicyclists, I never realized bicycles had that much political power in this town. They got bicycle lanes everywhere down. There's more to come. Who the hell wants bicycles everywhere? Bicycles probably got old ladies.
One more comment.
Well, now, about these bicycles.
In the news recently, you
Cars,
saw a
trucks,
report
buses.
about the bonds, like for that substation
Oh, yeah.
that was supposed to be built, and they never built it. How many? That's made me think. How many bonds has been passed that have not even been started?
I think it was
Like that
100
project or some
100.
other project or some other thing, and they're sitting on this $1 billion that supposedly, people voted these bonds
I
in.
think it was $104 million
Yeah,
that are unspent at this time that were passed. My God, 20.
all those bonds that these people supposedly
Year
have passed,
2000.
and the money's still sitting there, or is the money there? Because money's probably done been spent on something else, but but that was in the news recently because you were talking about money. That's where they're probably getting the money to pay the Code Next. What are those consultants?
Oh, no, we have a lot of money in our city.
Yeah.
Our city budget now is close to $2 billion.
Really?
3.9.
Sorry, 3.9,
Really?
sorry, I misspoke, 3.9.
Wow.
He was right.
Austin Energy
Really?
Lake,
Right.
too, itself.
I mean, of course, that's nothing compared to New York, which is, many times, but of course, it's a much bigger city. But the idea of us having an almost $4 billion budget in this city,
Yeah.
think about it, that happened very rapidly.
To do a whole lot with $4 billion.
And that's
I know that
part of
much.
the problem. Part
Yeah,
of the problem is we have
South by
people
Southwest,
in charge of the money who shouldn't be in charge of the money.
Well.
Okay? And people in charge of making decisions about planning and how we grow who shouldn't be in charge of those decisions. okay?
Yeah.
All these people, their six-figure salaries.
Well, their priorities.
You get to 3.9 billion by year after year after year after year, passing 7.8, 7.9% tax increases, and they do that because they stay below the 8% level, because should the city decide to raise your taxes by 8% or more, they would subject themselves to a petition for a rollback election. So they push the envelope right to the limit, and I think it's something like about 10 out of the last 12 years, you've seen your city taxes go up by just under the legal limit, and that's how you get to 3.9 billion very quickly.
And every government stays away from zero-based budgeting. Okay?
Sadly.
You know, the only one that used it and practiced it was your boy, George P. Bush. In his office, he used zero-based budgeting.
Yeah.
But when we were in the city,
My
let me
friend.
tell you, because I worked for Parks and Rec, and I was a department, recreation center supervisor. I mean, the mindset within the employees, within the municipality, was spend as much as you can. Next year, you better, if you have unallocated funds or surplus funds in your
Yes.
budget, it's $2,000, you better get that other table you don't need, because you're going to lose it. So that, all of that multiplies throughout the whole city
Yeah.
to millions
Well,
and millions of dollars.
I have to be, I don't want to sound like an economist here, but deficit spending isn't necessarily bad if the
Right.
expenditures are for good things.
Right.
Our city, unfortunately, has an incredible amount of race and class inequality. The problem is that most of the public tax money isn't spent wisely. It goes in the hands of special interests, city hall ghouls, and people who are politically connected through a whole range of network of a spider's web of political connections. So the money, we need money to do things. We need money to deal with the problems that we face as a city. The problem is that there is this bottlenecking. There's this entire complex of special interest influence that sucks a lot of that money up. And people should be aware to maintain the focus on that problem, not necessarily on the fact that the tax rate is X or, something, or the budget is Y. That,
Well,
that
I'm very
is a
simple.
diversion. That is a bait and
I'm very
switch.
simple. When I get my taxes and they're 7,008, that to me is enough. I don't need to go any
Oh, I hear you. I hear you. And-
For a home that I
Well,
haven't even put a nail in,
I'll
now
dovetail.
paying
Our tax-
7,000
our
a
tax
You
year.
ain't improved it at all, but the price keeps going up.
Bear in mind, our tax rates as a city are not the highest in Texas, not even close. Our
Is that
real
right?
es- That's correct. Dallas, other cities pay higher taxes than we do. What we have is we have the highest real estate valuations.
Value, yeah.
That's what we have in Austin, okay? Look at, go to, in the western parts of the city or the county. Those multi-million-dollar estates, those are worth a lot of money, okay? So that's the problem. So make sure you're clear about that.
Well, Fred, though, regardless of whether the fact that your tax bill gets higher year after year due to the tax rate or the property valuation, it puts more money in the pocket of the city. And I do agree
Yeah.
with you that in many, many cases, it's not well spent. And I think if you want to look at a city's priority, if you want to know what's important to a city, you look at their budget. You look where the money goes. And if the
Yes.
money isn't in the right priorities, then that's where you need to make your challenge. This budget is poorly constructed. It's not addressing our priorities.
It's not.
No.
It's not.
He's completely right. I completely agree with that. When you look at everything about the budgeting process, to the special interests that show up at budgeting time,
Oh, gosh.
If our city had true Fourth Estate reporting, real journalism, okay, it would be astonishing what you would see about the degree of special interest.
You mean something better than the trailer park show? You're right, I understand, you need to have.
And these are all symptoms of folks that we vote for.
And now I want to
What's
go
how they got
back.
elected?
I didn't know. Yeah, I guess I did.
Look at that report. Did you see that report in the Austin Bulldog that Ken Martin did? about
Yeah,
the Central
I like
Health
Kim
money?
Martin.
Yeah.
He put on walks.
After the
He's
tax
got
increase
price.
for Central Health?
Yes.
And what do? They gave sugar to every damn nonprofit in town, who all ended up supporting who for political office? Okay? Connect the dots.
Damn,
Hundreds of thousands of dollars for parties.
Yes.
Let's just call it what it is.
that party hardy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a
Ken
question.
on this program. I'm sure
Well,
he'd be
I wanted
happy
to go back
He's been on
to,
before, I need to get him on
I
again.
want to go back to the fight last night, or what happened?
Now, hold on, before we do that,
Kentucky Derby.
Yeah, yeah,
hold on, before we do that, I gotta talk about my friend Gavino here.
all right.
Now, I like to put it on a more elementary level. I know where he lives. That house is not worth no $400,000. You're talking about the real estate prices? And I know that's how much they're gonna tax for it. But it's kind of so far beyond, like I told you last week with me and Bob, we're getting to be elderly on fixed income, and my landlord's gonna raise the rent, it's gonna have to. And it's all
Property
because
taxes, I'm sure, went up
the
to,
property value gonna keep going up.
Please quit banging the table.
But anyway, I don't know what exactly it is, but I know it's not, people like Gavino that's been there forever.
Are you
Why they
gonna
gonna
sell?
chicken him? He showed the tax receipts. Why did chicken him so bad?
You make me think of the home show. You gonna love it or list it?
Yeah. Well, you grew up in Montopolis.
Yeah.
Very beautiful land, very beautiful
Yeah.
views downtown.
It's not to knock his house, and it's a nice house,
Yeah.
nice yard, nice everything.
I can imagine the values of those properties today, because I remember when I was working in Montopolis, it was like late 80s.
Yeah.
I remember that
It was
whole
Poverty
area.
Island. It was Poverty Island, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was home.
It was home.
And it was good soil, and it still is good soil. It's so good that everybody want it.
Well, sometimes we go back to just sometimes I like to go back to an elementary level on this. That makes it easier to understand what we're getting into.
Well, let me ask Ed this question, and I believe he'll answer your question. Okay, so
I don't know if he even had a question. I just had a statement kind of.
well, I want to go back to when you initially started speaking.
Okay.
Tell the audience why it is that the city of Austin and other entities are against putting this on the ballot, and
Okay.
all other things that has to do with Code Next being.
Well, I'm going to answer that two ways. I'm going to give you their answer. I'm going to tell you what I think. Their answer is that, well, they've sought outside legal counsel that says that well, it's in contradiction to some state statutes. There's some questions about a little of the wording. Maybe it should have been a charter amendment instead of a city ordinance. Those are the reasons they trot out for why they don't think it should be on the ballot. And as I said, they can make those arguments later, but legally it has to be on the ballot. Now, personally, why do I think, and you'll never hear one of them say this, why they don't want it on the ballot? Because they're afraid it'll get beat, they'll lose, that it won't pass, that there's enough opposition to Code Next that should it end up on a ballot. And remember, that's not what we would be voting on in November. November, we would be voting on the right to vote on Code Next.
Can you
The
ask
vote on the content is later, but they see putting it on the ballot as the first step to a defeat. That there'll be enough opposition to Code Next when that vote eventually occurs that it will go down to defeat. And I think that they see this as the first bridge they can try to knock out from under us in accomplishing that.
If I could also take a stab at that question. When it became clear that we were serious about getting this on the ballot as community, not commodity, in Indy, Austin, and that we were going to probably succeed in doing so, the mayor released a statement. Okay, the mayor put out basically a statement to the effect that putting Code Next on the ballot would defeat the intent of 10-1. Okay.
Yeah, I've been down that road with
And you
him
might recall
personally.
that last week in the Austin Statesman, Roger Bourget, Nelson Linder.
One of my friends, Roger
Right,
Bourget.
okay, and others who were part of the effort to push 10-1,
Just what the hell does that mean?
published an op-ed in the Statesman basically saying, no, Mr. Mayor, actually, democracy of this nature is not, you can't use 10-1 as an excuse to not have 31,000 plus people have their will expressed by putting Code Next on the ballot. But there's another reason why this is bad. It's hypocritical, okay? Because if you take a look at certain provisions of our existing zoning code, they also don't mesh with what the mayor's argument is. For instance, if you want to establish a local historic district in Austin, you would imagine that that's a fairly simple and straightforward question. The city council, as the elected officials, should have it in their power to be able to designate a property historic or make a historic district.
You think so?
You would think so, but guess what? It isn't so simple. You see, what you need to do is you need to have a 50% plus one majority of the people inside the proposed district on top of the city council's support before you can get that done. So you see, whenever it benefits power, well, yeah, then absolutely, yes, But when, it involves democracy and citizen empowerment, well, yeah, then we get the bureaucracy, okay?
Oh,
You
yeah.
can't have it both ways, Mr. Mayor. You can't have it both ways.
That's,
Southwest Keys, what happened?
well, we don't have to film,
We don't need to
How come you
film,
didn't make it
but
last night?
because,
how come I didn't make it?
Yeah.
Because I received a call
Oh, I was just joking.
And was
You don't have to go
told-
into detail.
that
Don't do
something
that.
like this was gonna happen. And
You decided to stay home.
no, I was already engaged in another project at the time, so I wasn't gonna go anyway to begin
That was
with.
okay. Fred's handled everything.
But I think that
You really were talking about what happened, huh?
what's real important for people, because it came out in the newspaper. There was a big
yeah,
headline.
we got that.
But one of the
Paper
things
up.
that folks need to understand is that at Southwest Keys, it's a private institution. And they have the right to keep people out. It's not like if they were to have held it at a library, where it's a city facility and everybody's supposed to come in.
Well,
So
the
at
purpose
Southwest
of-
Keys, they had the right to not allow these persons to come into that building because it's private, it's not a public facility.
We'll let Fred tell us what the purpose of the meeting was for last night.
Yeah, we had a Community Not Commodity hosted a community forum at Southwest Key yesterday. It was well attended, and the idea was that it would be an informational session for people from the community to get information about Code Next, about how they can become involved in letting their elected officials and others know about Code Next and work with us if they so choose. And it was also intended to be a dialogue where people such as myself and others could answer questions that people might have, or where we could listen to comments that community members might have about things that we hadn't done, or understandings that we may not have had. So it was going to be an educational session for us as well, as people who have taken an interest in Code Next and have been working on it for a while. Unfortunately, a group called Defend Our Hoods and various other organizations decided that they wanted to disturb the meeting. They, in particular, do not like Susana Almanza, who is a member of Community Not Commodity. And they showed up with bandanas, hoods, and a bunch of other things, and wanted to come in there and more or less occupy the meeting. Shout everybody down, blow it up, make it so that nothing could take place. They had done this at a previous meeting a few weeks ago along East Riverside, where the East Riverside Ultra of Contact team had invited a developer to brief them about that big development that they're proposing for East Riverside, okay? That is going to displace a lot of people. But that group came in and shouted everybody down. It got ugly in that meeting, really, really ugly. So as Community Not Commodity, we put various contingency plans into motion, and we were successful in keeping these people from occupying our meeting, and our meeting went ahead as planned. It got a little touchy, but overall, we had a very successful meeting. A lot of people got information, a lot of collegiality, neighborhood community building took place at that meeting yesterday. And I think a lot of those people affiliated with that group were definitively exposed as not being a grassroots group. They are a grass tops group, okay? And, quite honestly, I question whether...
What group?
Grass tops.
And do we know why or where they're coming from? I attended the one on the one you're talking about, but I didn't stay there that long. But I did see the whole video. So, but I couldn't connect them going to Southwest Keys. What I was
They
trying
don't
to-
like Susanna, that's it.
Oh, okay, so that was the issue.
They don't like Susanna and anyone who works with Susanna. They
Okay,
explicitly
so-
identified that.
So
as-
it wasn't about Code Next, pro or con?
Well, they have this, you have to look at what they've written and what they
Okay.
say. They consider, their problem is quote-unquote gentrification.
Okay.
That's the bad boogeyman that they hate. They consider gentrification to be a war,
Okay.
okay? And they consider people such as Susanna and myself and Community Not Commodity as collaborators and sellouts.
Oh, okay.
You see, they're the pure ones. They're the keepers of the flame, the true, the true bearers of the faith.
Yeah, see, that's why I
Okay.
stay home, because I get confused, and, and even when I stay home, I get in trouble.
We're not as young as we used to be,
Because the next real big event that's happening right after this is the discussion with Bella and Cheryl Cole that's happening this evening. And that one's a very,
Big
very...
Democrat debate you
Yeah, yeah, and that one is also very, oh, you're going to support so-and-so, and I said, man, one, I don't live in the district to begin with. Second, the only thing I stress is that people just vote, go out and vote, and make sure they voice their opinion, especially those that live in that district. That are,
Now, in this time and age, and when we vote, we just can't just go out and vote. You need to know who you're going to vote
Right.
for and know who they are before you even get to the voting poll.
Absolutely.
Because everybody is not for your interest. We're seeing that
Oh, yeah.
with 10-1.
And the electric is very unpredictable.
It is. It is. Okay, now, last night meeting had to do with gentrification as well. And Fred, I agree with you. The panel was awesome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I hate Nelson didn't get a chance to make with us today, but we know he was probably with
Going to
Fred
that forum.
Brian Manley. But the thing of it is that a lot of good things came out of that meeting last night. It was about solutions for gentrification. And so we certainly need solutions because we all know what the problem is.
Yes.
We certainly need solutions, and I feel like we needed a little bit more time. I know it was just a 2 to 4 thing, but I feel like we need to have another one
Yeah?
where we can continue some more things. And I hate that this, well, I shouldn't say that it hadn't happened long before. I'm sure it has. I think more and more now the community is getting involved, and we need to stay out there, and we need the community to continue getting involved because other than that, you don't know what's going on. You're going to look up, and the city of Austin going to be done took your land and everything else, and you're going to be wondering when and how did that come.
Hey,
I mean, people need to know that there are citizens out there. You know, I mean, if you're out there feeling alone, your taxes are too high, the rent is too damn high.
Well,
You know, you can't put food on the table. You know, your children, you're concerned about your children in school and their future. You're not alone. You're not alone. People need to know that. Solidarity is huge. And, you know, people can make all sorts of connections. And if people see that we have a plan, we have a program, unlike these people who protested yesterday, we have put on the table proposals that we have taken months to put together that have been vetted legally and in other ways. So, you know, we're out there. We're engaged. We're actually out there. Shoe leather, knocking on doors, you know, appearing
That's
on shows like
grassroots.
this. Absolutely. That's grassroots. Talking to our neighbors. Community, not commodity, says it all. Okay? That's the bottom line. Community, not commodity.
why don't you share that? So, just share a little bit of that question that was raised last night that had to do with AISD. I thought about it, and I thought about it last night, and I said, "Oh my God!"
Some people didn't want it there at Southwest Quvo because they that part of that.
I can't remember verbatim what the woman's question was about AISD, but what I did hear and find out in this meeting regarding AISD was that, for me personally, you know, we do hear about a lot of school closures in East Austin and so forth. Fred, tell us why.
Well, make no mistake about it. Gentrification has a devastating impact on schools.
Isn't that isn't that something?
Take a look at other cities that have experienced runaway gentrification, or cities like New Orleans that after Katrina essentially privatized and charterized their entire school system.
Wow.
Okay? And look at what the results have been. Look at what the outcomes have been. The truth is that in Austin now, we have two school systems. We have a school system for West Austin, and we have a school system for East Austin. Many of the kids who were attending Austin ISD schools from East Austin now go to charter schools. From the standpoint, I think, of an administrator at the Austin ISD, you have to make a judgment, okay? Do we have the resources to serve these children? And a political judgment has to be made. And that political judgment was essentially made when that bond was put before the voters a few months ago, and that bond was approved, okay?
What was the bond?
Well, that bond did a bunch of things.
The AISD bond?
Yeah, the AISD bond. That's the one that's going to produce
$1 billion worth of bond.
$1 billion worth of money
God.
to consolidate schools, to renovate schools, to bring the Liberal Arts and Science Academy to the old Johnston High School campus near Southwest Key, okay? LASA is going to leave LBJ, the magnet school, and it's going, the best high school in Austin, quote unquote, one of the 100 best in America. The flagship high school of Austin ISD is going to now get its own independent campus at the old Johnston High School.
Really?
Okay, and the Eastside Memorial students are now going to go into the old Anderson campus near Booker T.
And that's some more busing.
Well, I mean, that's
Ain't
what's-
far, but still.
I mean, you just pointed. I mean, that the irony of that is delicious because
That-
if you go back 50 years or 40 years,
That is why people are leaving AISD.
Well, the thing of it too.
you wanna go to your neighborhood school.
It was so amazing that I never thought about the effect that gentrification had on our school districts.
Oh, yeah.
So the thing of it is that if you push out the community,
The kids go with.
the kids go with them, and what's being replaced with them? 2 people and some dogs.
that's it.
I mean, it's just,
Fortunately, it's not usually my people.
I mean, but they're still paying property taxes too, and they don't have any kids in the school district, but it's amazing. So I'm in agreement. I was just thinking, yes, they do need to consolidate some of these schools, have their realtor go in and do something.
Let me blow your mind some more.
Go for
I'm
it.
going to make a statement that some people out there, like of the 50 watching, might take controversial, but I'm
We
gonna,
have more than 50.
okay, 50 viewers.
We had 52 or 3 anyway.
But let me make a statement.
Last time we had
because I think
22, but-
I think it's completely true. Austin Community College,
Mm-hmm.
Austin ISD, the University of Texas, this has certainly always been true. They now are real estate developers. They are not educational institutions anymore. They are educational institutions in name, and they still furnish education. But where the real action is in their finance divisions, where they play games with real estate and hang out together with, heads of other public institutions like housing authorities or CTRMA. You need to understand how all of these different things are connected and who sits at the apex of the pyramid.
Sherry Greenberg.
Once
Sherry
you
Greenberg.
do, it all becomes very clear to you.
Well,
Okay?
you named a diverse of different agencies. So
Look
you
at what
deal with
ACC
you deal
did
with
the
transportation.
Look at ACC and the Highland campus. Look at all of the transit-oriented development stuff. That has been the meme in City Hall for the past 10, 15 years. New urbanist religion. All of this stuff is connected. And there are people who work for planning and consulting firms and law firms who have made millions of taxpayer dollars.
Exactly.
Advising elected officials
Exactly.
on this.
All they have to do is ask us for free.
Well, I mean,
I'll tell you for a
Ask us for free.
you're right about that. Most of them have been white. I'll be perfect. You're right about that. Most of them have been white. Okay, but not exclusively.
But it don't matter what color you are. That's some stupid crap you're doing. All I'm saying to you is that ask us. Ask someone with some local wisdom. I mean, come on. You don't have to pay thousands of dollars, millions of dollars to hire a consultant when all you have to do is ask the people that live there that will tell you about the changes that you're trying to make for them. So no.
What are you talking about? You're talking about
Well,
Marilyn?
you know that the mayor,
money is.
the mayor
We
is,
can keep some money.
the mayor of Austin is heavily real estate. That's his background. That's where he came
Well,
from. So those are the ones that
If I can, I'll
meet
put
up
them
here.
in later.
Thank
Look at the land, look at the tools that they have, look at the power structure.
And
Look at the government power structure that they have.
If you are constantly recruiting businesses or encouraging businesses to move here that require degrees, that bring in people from out of state with high salaries, and if that is a process that goes on long enough, you're going to have serious consequences with the enrollment at public schools. Because when people can afford private schools, many people are going to take that option. And I wasn't necessarily a big fan of the AISD bond. I liked some of it. I thought some of it was perhaps poorly thought out, but it was passed and that money's available when they decide to start issuing those bonds. And as I understand, they're going to follow the typical pattern of issuing those bonds on a piecemeal basis over time to bring in revenue as they need it for whatever project they want to move forward with. But I think it goes just beyond the quality of the physical building and the teachers you put in it. If you are driving the city to push in or to bring in people with higher incomes who can afford private education, the school district, and my wife works for the school district. I got some skin in the game here. She gets paid by the school district, but if we don't bring
Six-figure
it,
salary, or
no,
not that kind of school?
far less than that.
Come on, man.
But, no, she's a counselor.
Looking for a donor,
She's a counselor at an elementary
Oh,
school.
no, that's way low for me.
Yeah, that's bottom of the barrel wages.
Yeah, never mind.
So we are not, there's been some vain attempts, some half-hearted attempts over the years to try to encourage employers to come into this town and locate where the need is, the job need is for people with a high school education or an associate's degree. We need more employment opportunities to provide jobs that make a decent living with benefits that'll keep people here. And those employers are so far out on the back burner, it's incredible. But hey, we got to have an Amazon. What do we need? How far do we need to bend over to have an Amazon here? Where the average salary is going to be something like about $110,000 a year. Well, how many employers have we encouraged to come to Austin that could locate where the unemployment levels are high and provide jobs at a skill level that people can fill those jobs? That's been a disappointment of mine in this city for many, many years.
We just had Domino's open up in my house.
Well, I mean, look,
Amazon,
do you know what the
though,
unemployment level is for African-American men under
No.
age 19?
What's that?
Oh, it's,
75, 80%?
there you go. There you go.
Damn.
In Chicago, it's over 90%.
I thought my buddy Trump was helping us out here.
Okay? I mean, so what Ed's talking about is the crisis for young black men for a long
Discrimination does
time.
come into the workplace,
Okay.
whether they want to say that they're non-discriminatory, but there's a lot of discrimination in the
Well, of
workplace.
course it is.
Well, yeah, and Ed is completely right. We have a local political economy that is geared, and has been for years, not for the people that actually live here and for our quality of life. It is toward forever growing the tax base by bringing in large employers like Samsung, Apple,
I'm guilty.
Amazon, Oracle. This is what we bend over backwards for them. These companies get to show up here and name their terms
And they
dangle the city
have
council
money.
around.
Yes, we don't have to give them any incentives for coming.
Well, I'm guilty of that because I really pushed for Samsung. I've been
Well, they've been here forever too.
I made a lot of money off of them.
I have a
worked there
question. I have a question I want to ask, and I know that everybody talks about this, but I want this to be, I don't know if I want to call it a movement, but I want this to be an initiative for us
Okay.
to show and say what Austin will be like in the next 10 years. What will our city look like? Who will be recognizable in this city as a citizen? You know, not a citizen, I didn't mean it that way. I meant from an Austinite. Will we even recognize any previous Austinites in the city.
Oh,
Will they all
they're
be newly people that have just come to the city?
No, they're all gonna be where Manly is right now, Austin Colony.
Oh, okay.
We need to put
Austin is
together
over.
some pictures, some images. We need to put together something, like a photo book to say, this is what we used to have, this is where we need something.
Well, that's a good transition back to Code Next.
Transition.
Because frankly, Code Next is the single biggest determiner of what this city will look like in the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years. I've lived in Austin 35 years. I'm not a native, but I've been here a long time, and I've followed politics closely. And nothing in the 35 years I've been here remotely approaches the potential impact on the future of the city of Austin as Code Next. We've had some important things come down the pipeline, but they pale in comparison to this.
Yeah.
This is the biggie, folks. This is it. Get involved.
You've been active in all that time, too.
Get involved. Get educated.
Yes.
Since the 70s, I've seen quite a few not neighborhood plans, but zoning or, there've been, before Imagine, there was another one before Imagine,
Yes.
and then there was another one before that, so.
And if they get their way and tearing down Booker T,
Well, our public housing is on the path to destruction and privatization and marketization. Public housing is over as a policy in the United States.
what would it look like?
Well, poor people are going to be left to their own devices. That's it. It's over. Unless there is an uprising. And there is that.
And
one of the reasons I'm on this show
We're too old for uprising.
is because I do feel there is a populist uprising. The pain is real. People are hurting.
Yes.
And you can no longer ask them to pull themselves up by the bootstraps. They don't have
Yes.
any boots anymore.
Yeah.
They need help. Okay.
And we need to stop running.
And
Now
we're-
we're fighting. Now we're fighting.
And when people need help, they get desperate.
Yes.
Okay, and it really, the choice before the politicians, I think, is pretty straightforward, because we've had now 40 years of redistribution politics, where we've taken money that was going to help poor people and others, and for the general welfare, we have redistributed that money in the direction of business, okay, incentives, under this theory that if businesses profit, if rich people do well, everybody does well. That experiment is over, and we know it was a lie.
Yes.
Okay, it was never true. So now we're going to see how things turn out. That's the big picture. In terms of our local elected officials, three things: taxation, regulation, redistribution. That's it. That's it. They either, that's it. It's
And they have the
one or
money
the
to
other.
do it.
Those are the
You
choices.
have the money to
You
put the
cannot
money
use
back.
identity politics and charity anymore to cover up the fact that you're crooked.
So what happens
Well-
when we stop all this?
I'm glad you asked, because I've been on the show a couple times fairly recently, and that question's come up.
Hopefully we'll all be on here
That
a couple
question-
times.
Go for it, because I'm sorry I asked it kind of late. We're running
No,
out of
that's all
time. Go for
right.
it.
That's all right. I've done a lot of presentations and I've heard hundreds of questions, but you hear the same 3 or 4 more than you do any others, and that's a common question. Well, okay, we get the right to vote for it, and then down the road, we vote down Code Next.
Vote
Well,
it down.
what happens then?
Yes.
Well, we've wasted 4 years and $8.2 million. That's not true. That is not true. There's a lot of useful data. There's a lot of ideas in Code Next. We can go back. We can take the sections out that are much more widely approved of and thought well of in Code Next. It's within the City Council's power to adopt almost any individual part of Code Next anytime they want to. What we're being presented with is an enormous package, take it or leave it. It's an all or nothing proposition. But we can go back, we could reconstruct Code Next that in a form or fashion and content that's much more acceptable to the general public. We can take some of the pieces of it and enact those as ordinances and programs immediately. It's not a lost cause. There's a lot of good that's come out of it, if nothing else. We've had an opportunity as a city to really take a hard look at what our priorities are, and versus those that think they know what's best for us want to present to us.
What do you do if
Well, I don't agree with that. I hear what Ed is saying. Code Next it starts from a flawed premise. first of all.
I agree with that.
Okay, and you've already heard me criticize Imagine Austin itself earlier. There are inequities and problems with Imagine Austin. You cannot have a code that implements a flawed document. And you can't make this stuff up as you go along, which is what the Planning Commission is about to do, and what it looks like our City Council is going to be doing. That is profoundly undemocratic for something this important. Code Next we need to start over, okay?
We need
to do this more
that's what
democratically.
right.
We need to do it in a way that has community support. We need to completely be more pragmatic and remove the religion, the false religion of new urbanism from any planning discussions in our city. And I hope our new city manager basically takes a hard look at the planning and zoning department and puts new people in place who know what they're doing, okay? I worry about also what implementation of Code Next would do to East Austin and to people of color in our city, and seniors and low-income families. Because Code Next specifically is designed to raise market valuations. It's specifically designed to appease the real estate industry, okay? Though I worry about those things, because quality of life and community are not, and housing and real estate are not the same thing. We have a right to housing, I believe, and certainly the United States once believed that, and it's in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Gentrification is a violation of human rights. So for me, we need to do it over. And I'll point this out as well.
They're going to cost us another $8 million.
It won't cost
Not if we do it right.
Okay, all right.
Remember, the people who have been pushing Code Next, who say that our land development code is broken, none of them have actually published a white paper or a position paper explaining in detail what parts of the existing code they don't like. They haven't done that. They have not even met a basic intellectual burden of proof. Yet they want us wholesale to do this? It's nonsense. It is an ideological construct that they want the citizens of Austin to adopt. For a long time, they said it was going to be good for affordability, good for the environment, and good, in other transportation-wise and other sorts of things. All of those things have been exploded as being false or unproven. We need to go back and do it right this time.
Fred, I think we're probably
You got a minute and a half, so.
we're probably a lot more in agreement than you might think. I do think, and we're out of time, I do think there's some concept and some ideas within Code Next that are worthy. They're few and far between, but I don't think it's a total failure. I think there's some
Not a
concepts.
form-based code. Can't have a form-based code.
No, I'm not going down that road because I don't believe in that either. But I want to.
I just want to see more of us people at the table from East
Absolutely.
Austin that are
Absolutely.
landowners. That look like me.
Well, we need renters.
While I've got a minute, I want
Definitely have a voice.
to piggyback on something
We're going to run out quick here.
that Fred said.
I need to say something.
We have a new city manager, and it is my hope, and I know a lot of people feel the same way, that we have a city manager that will have the wherewithal, the will, the courage to occasionally buck the system. I don't want to. Well, I don't want a city manager that's.
I'm about to cut it off.
I'm going to go with the flow on everything.
You can probably go to the Park Show Facebook and get some of the film we planted to show. We'll have this show up as quick as we can, and it'll be on Facebook too. We won't be back till June.
Damn.
Next week is a show coming on, then they're going to remodel the studio, and then it's Memorial Day. So we'll be back, and Mike Lee is always on. He'll be on next in 30 minutes. I think the hell out of y'all coming in. I'd like to have all that good info. Bye-bye, folks.